Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are looking at a figure who is, he's essentially a living paradox.
That's a good way to put it.
We're talking about a guy who built a billion-dollar empire on, a foundation of anti-establishment rage.
Right.
A guy who is arguably the most famous producer in music history yet. He openly admits he doesn't write his own lyrics and barely plays the instruments on his own tracks.
Which is just fascinating.
We are looking at the architect of the West Coast sound, Andre Romell Young.
Better known to the world and definitely to the bank as Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre. And look, usually when we do these deep dives, we're kind of tracking a linear progression. Someone starts small, gets big, maybe fades away.
A pretty standard arc.
But looking at the research here, Dre's career doesn't look like a line.
Hey.
It looks more like a heart monitor. It's these massive spikes of industry-defining success, and then they're followed by these flat lines, legal disasters, and just periods of total silence.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't just change hip-hop once. He did it 3 distinct times.
Right. In 3 completely different decades, with 3 totally different sounds. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he pivoted and completely changed the hardware industry with beats. Right. But before we crown him the King of Midas, I kind of want to challenge that narrative a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's this great man theory around Dre, where everything he touches just turns to gold. But when you really dig into the notes, and we have a lot of them today, you see a lot of wreckage.
Oh, for sure.
You see failed supergroups, you see scrapped albums, a trail of lawsuits, and a very dark history of personal violence.
So is he a genius architect, or is he just the guy who survived the chaos long enough to cash out?
That is the central question, isn't it? And I think to answer it, we have to look at a theme that runs through his entire life, which is control versus chaos.
Control versus chaos. Yeah. Dre is obsessive about control in the studio. We're talking Kubrick levels of perfectionism. But outside the studio, his life has been defined by absolute unmanageable chaos. And his success, it seems, usually comes down to whether he can build a wall thick enough to keep that chaos out.
Well, let's see where that wall started building.
Yeah.
Because the origin story isn't straight out of Compton. It's straight out of a swimming pool.
It is, yeah. Andre Young, born 1965 in Compton. And you're right, the image of the hard-bitten gangster rapper doesn't usually include a Speedo and a swim cap.
Not at all.
But at Fremont High School, Dre was a diver.
A diver. I am trying so hard to picture the guy who made The Chronic doing a reverse pike off a diving board.
Apparently, he was pretty decent, but this is where we see that first crack in the discipline. He had the physical talent, but he didn't have the academic focus.
Right.
He was missing classes, his grades were tanking. There's actually a detail here that I love. He tried to get into an apprenticeship program at Northrop Aviation.
To build planes.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Exactly. Can you imagine a timeline where Andre Young becomes an aerospace mechanic?
The whole music industry would look completely different.
Completely. But his grades were just too low. He couldn't get in. So the diving team is out, the aviation career is out, and his mother, Verna, she essentially gives him an ultimatum: get a job or get an education.
And he chooses.
Neither. Well, he chooses a night shift.
Okay.
He starts focusing on the social scene, on the music, and this is where Dr. J is born.
Dr. J, like the basketball player, Julius Erving.
Julius Erving, yes. That was his favorite player. So before he was Dr. Dre, he was spinning records at a club called Eve's After Dark under the name Dr. J.
Yeah.
And we really need to linger on Eve's After Dark for a second, because this isn't just a venue. It's basically a laboratory for him.
This is where he meets DJ Yella, right?
He meets Antoine Carabee, yeah, DJ Yella. But more importantly, this club had a back room. And in that back room was a small 4-track recording studio. So while everyone else is out front partying, Dre and Yella are back there, and they're not just playing records, they're dissecting them, they're splicing tape, they're learning how to layer sounds. This is that crucial transition from just being a DJ to becoming a producer.
And that's when the name changes.
Yep. He eventually modifies it to Dr. Dre, the master of mixology.
Okay, but we have to address the elephant in the room here.
Oh.
Or maybe the sequins in the room.
Uh-huh.
Because you look up photos from this era, the world-class Wreckin' Crew era, it's jarring.
It's the visual that Dre probably wishes he could scrub from the internet.
Describe it for anyone who hasn't been lucky enough to see it.
We are talking about shiny purple sequined bodysuits,
It's a lot.
lace gloves, stethoscopes worn as fashion accessories. It looked like Prince had a fever dream.
It looks like a disco cabaret. So how do we reconcile this guy with the guy who terrified suburban America just, 5 years later?
Mhm.
Is the hard image a lie, or is the sequin image the real costume?
Context is key here. I mean, you have to remember this was the mid-'80s West Coast electro-hop scene.
Okay.
The dominant sound wasn't gangster rap. It was fast electronic dance music. Think Africa Bambaataa, Planet Rock style. If you wanted to be a star in Compton in 1985, you wore the sequins.
So it was just the uniform for the job.
It was the uniform, and they were stars. I mean, their song Surgery sold 50,000 copies just locally. That's huge for that time.
Surgery. I guess the doctor theme was consistent at least.
It was. The theme was there. But that disconnect you're pointing out, the difference between the shiny suit and the actual reality of Compton, that is exactly what triggered the first major pivot of his career.
And that's where Eazy-E comes in.
Enter Eazy-E, Eric Wright, the drug dealer turned record executive.
All right.
Eazy had the money, he had the street credibility, but he didn't know a thing about music. He met Dre, and the whole dynamic shifted. Eazy basically looked at the world-class Wreckin crew and said, this isn't what the streets are actually like.
So they form N.W.A. But was it an instant switch? Did Dre just, take off the lace glove and pick up a microphone and suddenly he's a gangster?
No, it was a calculated pivot. They looked at what Public Enemy was doing on the East Coast, that political, noisy, revolutionary rap.
Very conscious.
Very. And then they looked at their own lives in Compton, the police brutality, the crack epidemic, the gang warfare, and they decided to make reality rap.
Which the media immediately branded gangsta rap.
A term they hated, by the way. They always called it reality rap. But the sound, this is where Dre's genius really starts to show. N.W.A.'s production wasn't just loud, it was abrasive. It was designed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when they dropped straight out of Compton in 1989, it did something that should have been impossible. It became a nationwide hit with virtually zero radio play.
That's the part that I struggle to comprehend in today's world.
Yeah.
How do you go multi-platinum without the radio? How does anyone even hear it?
You rely on the taboo. The fact that you couldn't hear it on the radio made you want to buy the cassette tape even more.
It makes it forbidden.
Exactly. And then the government gave them the best marketing push they could have ever asked for.
The FBI letter.
Milt Allerich, an assistant director at the FBI, sends an official letter to Ruthless Records condemning the song Fuck They Police.
Which is just, that's the best marketing campaign in the history of music.
You couldn't pay for that kind of publicity. It validated everything they were saying. It proved to every kid in America that they were dangerous. It turned them from a rap group into a First Amendment issue.
Wow.
But going back to our theme of control versus chaos, N.W.A. was pure chaos, and Dre wasn't in control.
Jerry Heller and Eazy-E were controlling the money.
Correct. Dre was the sonic architect, Ice Cube was the primary writer, but Eazy and their manager, Jerry Heller, held the checkbook.
And Cube leaves first.
Cube left first because he did the math and it wasn't adding up. Dre stayed a bit longer, but eventually he realized the same thing. He was building a mansion and being forced to sleep in the shed.
So he leaves. 1991, the biggest, most controversial group in the world, and he just walks away. And this brings us to Suge Knight.
The infamous Suge Knight. The bodyguard who whispered in Dre's ear, he got Dre out of that ruthless contract.
Allegedly using some very persuasive tactics.
Yes, allegedly using some very intimidation-heavy tactics involving baseball bats and lead pipes, and they go off and found Death Row Records.
And this is where the sound completely changes. And I want to get technical here for a second, because people say G-Funk and they nod their heads. But what is G-Funk? What did Dre actually do to the music?
This is the critical innovation. This is pivot number 2. Before the chronic East Coast hip-hop production, think the Bomb Squad with the Public Enemy, it was really dense.
A wall of sound.
A total wall of noise, collage-style sampling, very heavy in the mid-range frequencies. It was designed for boomboxes and headphones.
It was frantic. It was noisy.
Yes. And Dre, he slowed it all down. He dropped the tempo way down. But sonically, he scooped out the middle. He focused on 2 things, and 2 things only. Extremely low-frequency sub-bows and high-frequency synthesizer leads.
That high-pitched whistle sound.
That worm sound, yeah. Now, why did he do that? Because of where people in Los Angeles listened to music. They weren't on the subway with Walkmans.
They were in cars.
They were in cars, lowriders.
Right.
He engineered the frequency range specifically to rattle the trunk of a '64 Impala. If you played a Public Enemy record in a car with a massive subwoofer, it just sounded muddy. If you played the Chronic, it felt like a controlled earthquake.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to this control aspect. You mentioned something in the pre-show notes about interpolation versus sampling.
Yes. This is the secret sauce. This is so important. Most producers back then would just take a snippet of an old Parliament Funkadelic record and loop it. That's sampling. Dre stopped doing that. He would find the record. Let's use Leon Haywood's I Want to Do Something Freaky to You for Nothing But a G sang. And instead of sampling it, he would hire world-class musicians to come into the studio and replay it.
Why go through all that extra trouble?
2 reasons. One is business. If you replay it, you own the master recording of the new track, and you pay way less in royalties to the original artist.
Smart.
But the second and more important reason for Dre is sonic control. If you sample a record from 1975, you are stuck with the tape hiss, the mix, the slightly loose timing of the '70s drummer.
All the imperfections.
All of them. But if you hire a guy to replay it, you can quantize it. You can lock the drums to a perfect computerized grid. You can tune the bass so it doesn't clash with the kick drum. It allowed Dre to make funk music that sounded like a machine. It was clean, it was polished, it was totally pop ready.
So he basically cleaned the grit off the funk to make it more palatable.
He sanitized it just enough to make it palatable for the suburbs, while the lyrics remained absolutely terrifying. And that combination, that smooth, polished music with those hard, violent lyrics, it was unbeatable.
And The Chronic drops in 1992.
And it's a phenomenon. It ends up being the #6 best-selling album of 1993. It's everywhere.
And this is where he introduces the world to Snoop Dogg.
His stepbrother, Warren G., actually introduced them, and Snoop was the perfect vocal counterpart. Dre's beats were so laid back, Snoop's flow was just as laid back. It was a seamless marriage of sound and voice.
Then they turn around and do Doggy Style. First debut album ever to hit #1 on the Billboard charts.
Unheard of at the time.
Then they sign Tupac. They do California Love. I mean, they are literally on top of the world. But the chaos is creeping back in, isn't it?
The chaos didn't just creep in, it kicked the door down. Death Row Records under Suge Knight was? It was a house of horrors. There are stories of producers being beaten up for using the wrong phone, people being forced to drink urine. It was a mob operation masquerading as a record label.
And Dre, the control freak, is just watching all this happen.
He's watching his sanctuary, the studio, turn into a gang hangout. Tupac is getting more and more volatile, Suge is getting more and more violent, and Dre realizes, I can't work like this. I can't sit here and perfect a snare drum sound when I'm worried about a drive-by shooting.
So he leaves. Again, 1996. He walks away from Death Row, leaves the rights to The Chronic, leaves Tupac, leaves millions and millions of dollars on the table. He burns the entire empire down to save himself.
He does, and he starts Aftermath. But this is the part of the story that I think people forget. Aftermath didn't work. Not at first.
These are the wilderness years.
The wilderness years from 96 to 98. Dre releases a compilation called Dr. Dre Presents the Aftermath. It gets pretty mixed reviews. Then he tries to launch this supergroup called The Firm with Nas, Foxy Brown, and AZ.
On paper, that sounds incredible. Nas and Dr. Dre, that should be a classic.
On paper, yes. It should have been amazing. In reality, it was glossy, it was overproduced, and it was just boring. It flopped. And that's when the whisper started. Dre fell off. Dre lost it. Maybe Siege Night was the real reason for the success all along.
That has to be his absolute nightmare.
It was. He was staring down the barrel of total irrelevance. And then Jimmy Iovine, the head of Interscope Records, walks into his office and says, hey, I have this tape from a kid in Detroit.
Marshall Mathers?
Eminem. Now, we have to pause here and really contextualize 1998. Hip-hop was incredibly segregated. The only reference point most people had for a white rapper was Vanilla Ice, who was a punchline.
Right. The total joke.
So for Dr. Dre, the godfather of gangsta rap, to sign a scrawny white kid who rapped about murdering his mom and doing shrooms, it looked like career suicide.
People must have told him not to do it.
Everyone told him not to do it. His own business partners, his own associates told him he was ruining his legacy. And Dre's response was legendary. He just said, I don't care if he's purple. If he can rap, he can rap.
And when they got in the studio,
it was instant. The story is, Dre played a beat, Eminem just started chanting, hi, my name's Iz, and they had the single recorded in minutes.
Why did that combination work so well? They seem like polar opposites.
Because they gave each other exactly what the other one lacked. Dre gave Eminem credibility. If Dr. Dre co-signs you, the streets have to at least listen. But Eminem gave Dre a new kind of energy. It wasn't G-Funk anymore. It was frantic, psychotic, cartoonish energy. It totally revitalized Dre.
Which leads directly to 2001, the album,
Yeah.
which came out in 1999.
Yeah, don't even get me started on the title. Suge Knight, just to be petty, released a compilation called Chronic 2000 to troll Dre.
Unbelievable.
So Dre had to call his album 2001 to avoid a trademark dispute.
The pettiness is just incredible. But the sound of 2001, this is another pivot. There are almost no samples, right?
Very, very few. This was his stripped-down era. Think about the song Still DRE. It's just a simple piano riff, a bass line, and a drum beat. It's ominous. It's clinical. It sounded like the future.
Yeah.
And interestingly, on that track specifically, Dre didn't write a single word.
That was Jay-Z, right?
Jay-Z, the king of New York, wrote the definitive anthem for the king of the West Coast. Still representing for the gangsters all across the world, a guy from Marcy Projects wrote that line.
Does that bother you? As a music fan, the idea that the most personal manifesto of Dre's career was written by someone else.
You know, it used to. It really did. But then you realize Dre isn't really a rapper. He's a director. Steven Spielberg doesn't write every line of dialogue in his movies. He curates the vision. He brings the best people in. Dre's talent is knowing that Jay-Z could write a better Dr. Dre verse than Dr. Dre could.
That brings us to his methodology. Because the stories about him in the studio are, they're terrifying. We call him a perfectionist, but it sounds more like psychological warfare sometimes.
It definitely borders on it. There's a famous story from Snoop Dogg about a rapper named Bishop Lamont. Bishop is in the booth. He's excited to work with the legend. He raps a bar. Dre stopped the tape. Again.
Okay.
He does it again. Again. He does it again. Again.
How many times are we talking?
Snoop swears it was 107 times.
107 times.
Oh.
For one bar of music.
One bar, not a verse. A single bar. Can you imagine saying the same 10 words for like 3 hours straight? By the end, Bishop is exhausted. His voice is raspy. He's probably incredibly frustrated. And Dre goes, "That's it. That's the take."
What on earth was he hearing on take 107 that wasn't there on take 50 or take 100?
Maybe the struggle, the fatigue, or maybe just a micro-inflection in the breath that nobody else on the planet could hear. Dre treats the human voice like it's a synthesizer. He wants to tweak the knobs until the frequency is absolutely perfect. But, and here is our control versus chaos theme again, this perfectionism, it became a trap for him.
Detox.
The Great White Whale of hip-hop, the most famous album that never happened. It was announced in 2002. It was supposed to come out in 2004. Then 2005. Years went by. He released snippets in Dr. Pepper commercials.
I remember that.
He had, by his own admission, 20 to 40 songs done for it, and he scrapped all of them.
Why would you do that?
I think it was paralysis. He had set the bar so impossibly high with The Chronic in 2001 that the idea of releasing something that was just good wasn't enough. It had to be earth-shattering. It had to change the world again. And because he couldn't guarantee it would be perfect, he simply didn't release it. The control freak couldn't let go of the product.
It's fascinating that while he was creatively paralyzed, he made the biggest business move of his entire life. Let's talk about beats.
This is where he stops being a musician and becomes a tycoon. 2006. The iPod is everywhere. But everyone is listening on this cheap white plastic earbuds that came in the box.
And the sound quality was just trash.
It was terrible. So Dre and Jimmy Iovine are walking down the beach one day, and Dre's lawyer says, "Hey, you should sell sneakers." And Jimmy looks at Dre and says, "Screw sneakers, let's sell speakers."
Meaning headphones.
Right. But here's the cynical truth that nobody wants to admit. Beats headphones didn't actually sound that good.
Right. I remember the audiophiles hated them.
They despised them. They were incredibly bass-heavy and muddy, but that wasn't the point.
So why did they sell like crazy?
Marketing. Pure marketing genius. They didn't market them as a piece of tech. They marketed them as a piece of jewelry. They got LeBron James to wear them into the arena. They got every athlete at the Olympics to wear them. They made bulky, expensive headphones a status symbol.
And then Apple comes knocking.
Yeah.
2014, $3 billion.
The largest acquisition in Apple history at the time. But here's the interesting part. Apple didn't just want the headphones. They wanted the streaming service. Beats had started the service called Beats Music.
I remember that.
And it had a curated playlist algorithm that was way better than anything Apple had at the time. So Apple basically bought Beats to jumpstart what would become Apple Music.
But the deal almost died because of a Facebook video of all things.
Oh, the Tyrese incident. This is pure comedy. The deal is being finalized in a secret war room at Apple headquarters. Strict NDAs are signed. Nobody is supposed to know.
Super secretive.
And Tyrese Gibson, the actor, is hanging out with Dre in the studio. They're maybe having a few drinks. And Tyrese decides it's a great idea to post a video on Facebook.
I remember this video. They're celebrating. It's shaky.
It's so shaky. And Tyrese is screaming into the camera, "The first billionaire in hip-hop, the Forbes list just changed." And Dre's in the background laughing, pointing at the camera.
And Tim Cook is presumably not laughing.
The executives at Apple went nuclear. I mean,
Yeah.
Apple prides itself on secrecy and control. Jimmy Iovine panicked. He got a call from them essentially saying, "What the hell is this?"
Did it actually cost them?
It did. The rumor, which is pretty well sourced, is that Apple knocked $200 million off the final purchase price because of that video.
That is a $200 million selfie.
It's the most expensive selfie in history. But the deal went through. Dre became an executive at Apple. The kid from Compton who couldn't get a job at Northrop Aviation was now sitting in board meetings at the most valuable company on earth.
It really is the ultimate American success story.
Yeah.
But we can't tell this story, honestly, if we ignore the wreckage. We have to talk about the violence. Because there is a very disturbing pattern here that ran parallel to all of this incredible success.
We absolutely have to talk about it. And for a long time, the media and the fans, and I'll include myself in this, we sort of compartmentalized it. We separated the art from the artist. But when you look at the source material, the accusations are brutal.
Let's start with Dee Barnes. The year is 1991.
Dee Barnes hosted a popular hip-hop show called Pump It Up. She aired an interview with Ice Cube after he left N.W.A., and he insulted his old group. Dre felt disrespected. He saw her later at a record release party in Hollywood.
And he didn't just yell at her.
No. According to the court documents and multiple witnesses, he assaulted her. He slammed her head and face into a brick wall. He kicked her. It was a severe beating. She eventually settled out of court. But what's so chilling is Dre's reaction at the time.
What did he say?
He gave an interview to Rolling Stone magazine and just said, "I just threw her through a door." He completely trivialized it. He basically said she deserved it.
And that wasn't an isolated incident. Michelle, his ex-fiancée, the mother of his son.
She has been incredibly vocal about this for years. She accused him of repeated domestic abuse, black eyes, broken ribs. In her biopic Surviving Compton, she alleges that he actually shot at her once.
Why did he get a pass for so long? I mean, if a rock star or pop star did this today, their career would be over. Why was Dr. Dre so bulletproof?
I think part of it was the era. The 90s were just a less accountable time. But another part of it was the brand. His entire brand was gangsta. Violence was baked into the marketing. So when he beat up a TV host, strangely, it almost reinforced his street credibility. It blurred that line between the character Dr. Dre and the human being Andre Young.
Did he ever actually own up to it?
Not for decades. But in 2015, when the N.W.A. movie Straight Outta Compton came out, the filmmakers completely omitted the Dee Barnes incident. They just pretended it never happened. And the backlash was fierce. People said, "You can't just rewrite history like this."
So he was forced to apologize.
He was. He issued a formal statement to the New York Times. He said, "I apologize to the women I've hurt. I deeply regret what I did." And he blamed it on being young, drinking too much, and having no structure in his life.
Do you buy that apology?
It's hard to say. In the Defiant Ones documentary, he calls it a major blemish on who I am as a man. It feels like he understands the gravity of it now, especially as a corporate executive. You can't be an Apple exec and have that hanging over your head without addressing it. But for the victims, a press release 25 years late doesn't really undo the trauma.
It brings us right back to that control theme, doesn't it?
Okay.
The violence seems to happen when he feels disrespected or like he's losing control. It's this really ugly side of the perfectionism, the need to dominate his environment, whether that's a mixing board or a person.
That's a very sharp insight. The need for dominance is the through line, for good and for ill.
And recently, that dominance has been seriously tested. His personal life in just the last few years has been a complete disaster.
It really has. We mentioned the great man theory earlier, but Dre is human. In 2008, his son, Andre Young Jr., died of an overdose. Heroin and morphine.
God, that's awful.
To lose a child, I mean, that breaks anyone. And then in 2021, Dre himself almost died. He had a brain aneurysm.
I remember the headlines. He was in the ICU. It sounded really serious.
It was worse than we knew at the time. He just revealed last year that he actually had 3 strokes while he was in the hospital. Doctors were literally inviting his family in to say their final goodbyes.
And while he is lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life, his marriage is publicly exploding in the tabloids.
The divorce from Nicole Young. After 24 years of marriage, and it's ugly, fast. She accused him of abuse. She challenged their prenup. claiming he tore it up in front of her as a romantic gesture years ago.
Which, knowing Dre and his business sense, he probably regretted deeply.
The legal battle was vicious. In the end, he had to pay a $100 million settlement just to finalize it, and we saw that pettiness resurface one more time.
The balloon photo.
He posted a photo on Instagram of himself sitting in a chair smiling in front of these huge silver balloons that spelled out divorced AF.
It's so childish. But also, knowing what we know about him, it's him reclaiming the narrative. It's him saying, I won, I'm free.
I'm in control again.
Exactly. And then he takes the ultimate victory lap. The Super Bowl.
2022, the halftime show. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, Mary J. Blige, 50 Cent. That wasn't just a concert, that was a coronation. That was Dr. Dre standing on the biggest stage in America and saying, I built this. And he did. He built the sound of the West Coast. He built the careers of almost every superstar on that stage. And he built the headphones that half of America was probably listening on.
So as we wrap this up, I want to go back to the methodology. We've talked about the sequins, the G-Funk, the abuse, the billions. If you had to boil Dr. Dre's success down to one single trait, what is it? Because it's clearly not rapping. And technically, he hires other people to play the keys. So what is it?
It's the ear. It's as simple and as complicated as that. It's his ability to hear potential where no one else does. He heard a superstar in a lanky, laid-back kid from Long Beach named Snoop. He heard a generational talent in a volatile white kid from a trailer park in Detroit named Marshall. He heard a billion-dollar business in a pair of overpriced plastic headphones. And he heard a symphony in the rattling trunk of a lowrider. He just listens better than anyone else in the history of the business.
But I keep thinking about the empty space.
Yeah.
You know, the scrapped albums, the myth of detox, the long, long silences between the hits.
And that leads to my final thought for you to consider. We glorify Dre's perfectionism. We call it genius. But I wonder if the studio is the only place where Dre actually feels safe.
What do you mean?
In the studio, he can tell Bishop Lamont to do a take 107 times until it is perfect. He can mute the track. He can cut out the bad parts. He's in total control.
You can't edit real life.
Exactly. You can't edit a messy divorce. You can't edit a brain aneurysm. You can't hit undo on the death of a son. So maybe the perfectionism isn't just about making great art. Maybe it's a shield. Maybe he stays locked in the studio for years at a time because it's the one room in the entire world where he is God.
That is a heavy thought to leave on. The music is the order, the life is the chaos.
Precisely.
Well, whether you see him as the villain, the hero, or just the architect, you absolutely cannot deny the impact. Dr. Dre, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Take care.